Hi, I'm Dale. Today, just going to do a quick video on things to watch out for when you're buying a vehicle online, and this is going to be the mechanical edition. We'll do a paint and body sometime down the road, but probably this is the most important as far as what you're buying mechanically, anyway. So I'm going to start. We've got a mid '60s Ford F100, had a Ford 460 put in it, and I'm not going to identify this vehicle. This is about the most of it you're going to see because I don't want to be picking on anybody's car. This was up for sale here recently, and there was a lot of pictures of it. I thought this was a perfect example. So we're going to start with this. First thing I'm going to point out to you is the engine here. That it's out of a mid '70s Lincoln, I believe they said, and you can tell that they pull it from a wrecking yard or a car that they purchased, but they pulled it out, cleaned it up, and painted it. And they painted everything. Fuel pump. You can see underneath the distributors painted. Everything's painted. Uh, the gaskets for the valve covers are painted. Tells me uh, one very important thing is that uh, nothing was inspected on this motor before it was put in at all. I mean, there wasn't a valve cover pulled off or anything. So this would be a good purchase if your plan was that I'm going to buy a vehicle, I want to rebuild the engine and transmission, so I know what I have, so I can make long trips in it and feel safe in it. Now, if you're going to buy this thinking I'm just going to drive it, when you see this on any vehicle, just walk away from it. You have no clue what you got. I mean, this thing could have 300,000 miles on it. The one thing I'm looking at with this is kind of a telltale to me is this vacuum hose for vacuum advance is not there. That's one of three reasons. One is laziness, or they overlooked it. Two is they didn't know. Or three, when they put the vacuum advance on, it didn't run right. And that would tell me there's a problem with the timing chain, which I can almost guarantee you with this engine there is. Even if it's low mileage, if it hasn't ever been touched, nylon gear, it needs replaced. So if this were mine, if I were putting this engine in, what I would have done, pull this engine, I would have pulled everything off the front here, pulled the valve covers, pulled the intake, pulled the oil pan. At that point, I would replace the rear main seal, pull the main cap and rod cap for two reasons. One, to check for wear. Secondly, check for sizes to see if it's been rebuilt and if the crank has been turned down. And then I would go in and replace that timing chain unless it was absolutely brand new. I replaced timing chain gears. Uh, I would put a new fuel pump on it, new water pump on it, and all new gaskets were needed in the front crank seal there. That would be new, of course. And I put it all together, and I'd know at least that it would make it across town. Uh, so that's what I saw in this picture. Uh, Next picture here, I took this, or I kept this one really for one reason only, and that is this right here. And that there's plumber's tape as battery hold down, and you can see it's really not holding the battery down. But that's not my concern. That'd be kind of nitpicking it. No, problem is this is positive post, and that, and I've seen in a couple other pictures, not more than a quarter of an inch away from that positive post. So any movement in at all is going to ground this out, and you're going to have a fire. Now, this thing may uh, serve the purposes of a giant fuse and burn that right in half, but the possibility of it catching on fire, and I don't know if you've dealt with electrical fires or not before, but they are instant. There's no on and off with them, no slow burn. It's all on, wide open. So that's a huge danger right there. Next picture here, uh, stay with electrical. Here's the original fuse box. They put this UGA horn in. Now we're going to look at another picture and see that there's a good possibility of this engine flopping over and hitting this horn and pushing it in to this. Now the feed for this fuse box comes off the solenoid right here, comes down. So this is hot right here. So if this horn ends up against there, it's going to ignite the truck and burn it. It'd be hard to put that out. So that's a problem, whether it be a car accident, horn came loose, which is not likely, but if it did and fell over, real bad. So that'd be one thing when you're looking at going, I'm going to need it to do something with electrical. I'm going to need a new battery hold down, and I'm going to need to go through the engine. That's what we've covered so far. The other thing on this one is not huge, but just kind of the quality of work is that there's a vacuum hose going to the choke pull off here. It's going directly, looks like directly to vacuum. It's supposed to go through this thermal valve here. The thermal valve, you'd have vacuum going one side, then your hose from your vacuum pull off there. Then when it reaches a certain temperature, open it up and allow vacuum to your pull off. So that was that. So now I move on. The exhaust, whoever did this, it was ridiculous. Almost looks like the bends were in there in the correct spot to put it through this right here underneath the cross member, but they got it off and put it over the top for some reason. Now that created a problem. This is the first problem it created, was the speedometer cable. You can see they've got it cinched down here with a wire tie and a piece of hose, and it's just barely away from that exhaust. And they stated that they just put a new cable in. You can see why. I don't know what these yellow. I don't know if they're hose or cable. I didn't really follow those out any further than what it is right there. Uh, Next picture is showing you the transmission cooler lines, and it looks like they used what was in the Lincoln, and they're all twisted up, and actually appears to be touching the exhaust right there and going in the transmission. They're rubbing against this engine cradle right here. They got wire tied here. They got a piece of hose here hooked into it that goes up. Must be a union because it comes up and evidently hooks into the metal again. Comes up because the metal's right here where it goes into the radiator. And they got a little wire tie there, and it appears that it's probably rubbing against the cross member right there. They got it double clamped here, but the clamps are both in the same direction. So that's definitely, whenever when I'm building something, I always look at what's going to be my first failure, and that's it right there. Now, if you can look at this right here, it appears to me this guy remain seal leaking, and it's saturated a lot of the bottom of the truck. Now, there's a better picture of this, but this motor mount right here appears to be loose, and you can see where it's been wearing up and down the motor mount. That's where I was talking about is, that thing pops out of there, or if the mount broke and that engine lurches over to the right-hand side, which is the way the torque would take it, put it against that horn would cause that short. All right. Next one here, this is the hoses again that we were looking at, and or the lines, coolant lines, and you kind of get a better look at that. This would be a really easy fix. It's some steel line that's seamless, be easy to bend, and get it up there and get it where it belongs. But the way it is pretty poor. I'm also looking at this cable. Now this cable for the starter is dead all the time unless the solenoid's activated. But if you look at it, it comes down and wraps around the exhaust right there, and then comes back up, where it really should probably come up behind that motor mount there. Anyway, that's that. And like I say, there's a lot of other little things, but I'm not nitpicking this thing. I'm just showing you what I'd be looking at if I was thinking about buying it. Okay, on this side, again, you can see that motor mount bolt appears to be loose, been rocking around in there. This here, in fact, I got a better picture of this, I think, but this is the vent tube coming off the carburetor. Now, it should go to a carbon canister, but they actually got it just vented out here right by the exhaust and that had to be dealt with. This is the uh, brake lines. This one appears to have a pretty good crimp in it right here. I blew that up a little bit more, and it looked like it's crimped off pretty well. Now, you're talking of pressure against volume, and pressure is what's going to do your brake, but it could slow down the signal. This one's going to the passenger side front brake. Could slow that signal down a little bit. Plus, this being just wire tied together, I don't think that's very kosher. Should have something mounted to the frame here to hold that in place. I think that's about all I saw there. I could pick apart this cradle here, but I think it'll, it appears like it'll do its job, and that's what it's supposed to do. All right, move on. Another picture of the exhaust, but here is looking. It looks like the oil pan is gaskets leaking, and the modulator valve. Good chance it's leaking. Now this could be all blow back from that rear main seal leaking, but I saw one other picture with bolt heads. A couple of them had little drips on them, and they certainly looked like it was transmission fluid. So I think this is probably leaking and replaced. Again, I'd say it's no big deal. It's just when you're buying a vehicle, it's good to know what you're buying into. And so, I don't know if the modulator valve's bad or if it's just that, that O-ring that where it pushes into the body that's leaking there, but it's definitely leaking. Rear output looks good. That universal joint looks good. Here, I just wanted to look at two things. One is that you can see that all the rubber's getting rotted on this truck and hadn't been replaced. And that probably tells us too that it probably needs new shocks. I mean, if it's been on there long enough to do that, it probably needs new shocks. Again, not a big thing, but when you're adding that all up on a piece of paper, it adds up pretty quickly and makes a pretty good decision how much you're going to pay for a vehicle. And the other thing I had concern about, this thing's double nutted. Now there's a picture of the other side, and it's not double nutted, but it's double nutted on this side. And it looks like there's a bit of a gap right there as well, like they had to loosen that up, bring it over. So I don't know, if they put a washer or anything in there, but whatever it is, it's not quite right. So that probably needs to come apart. And taking it apart, this is, if you blow this up, this been dinged on with a hammer, so it probably need to be cut off and replaced. I say it's just all those little things that you kind of need to look at that you're going to need to do. The one thing I would do if I were going to buy this, it's got disc brakes on it, and there's not really any good detailed pictures of it. A few I've seen, looks like it might be a little wonky, and I would ask for detailed pictures just to make sure that it's put together right. All right, in this picture, real quick, axle seals leaking. When I first looked at this, it looked like the brake hose was attached up here and it was stretched like a banjo string, but it's not. Some other pictures I looked at, this is just hard as a rock, and it's just maintaining that form, but it's also leaking here. So it's probably, if it's not original, it's really old, and so that needs to be replaced. Next picture, see, I imagine they used RTV for a gasket in here, which works great for a few years, but after a while it starts looking like this, where a gasket, it'll last, won't normally do this. So that gasket needs replaced on that, on the differential. And also, not in this picture you can see, but others, that U-joint's really crusted up with old grease. It's probably been over greased and dried up, but it's something that definitely needs to be looked at and possibly replaced. I'm not doing body, so I'm not going to talk about, there's a couple little spots here I'm looking at. Overall, the body was in pretty good shape. And this is my last picture. I say I'm not nitpicking, but one of the things that I can tell you is if you see little things like this, there's no retainer on this boot, and there's no screws screwing it down. If they neglected to do that, they probably neglected to do a lot of things on this vehicle. And it's not a high dollar vehicle. At that point, in my mind, this plus what we looked at, this is uh, far from worth, um, a Mika model auction kind of price. So those are the kind of things. A lot of times when I would see things like this in a vehicle, I'll just walk away from it because I know for a fact that I'm getting myself into a lot of work. The other thing is, in this picture, when they put the carpet in, they uh, they didn't do anything but just rip a hole in it, put it in. Didn't do anything to keep that hole from getting bigger. As you can see, it is. And although I cut the picture off, it was the same up along the heater and stuff along the bottom. So um, yeah, that's really not. There's a lot of stuff that you can look at and say, well, that's the amount of workmanship. That's not workmanship right there. That's just getting her done. So, and the same with putting screws in, something like this. So, like I said, I didn't want to nitpick this thing. There was a lot of stuff we could have nitpicked, but no point of it. The big thing is, of what to look for, what's going to require work. And the biggest thing to me was that engine completely painted like that. You need to um, look at that, and make a decision, and that should most certainly be the deciding of the price too. I mean, if you're planning on rebuilding the engine and transmission in something like this, then it should be worth whatever it's going to cost you to do it less. Don't get carried away because you're going to be with that either because you're going to have a bonus of having a new engine and a new transmission, or remanufactured anyway. And if you do it yourself, you figure in the price, it's going to cost me $3,000 to do the engine and then $1,000 to do the transmission, and I'm not going to count my labor. That's kind of how you look at that. So if you're going to have somebody else do it, then you got to look at the overall picture of it. I'm going to have $12,000 more invested in this thing, so the truck's worth 20 if it were in great shape. Now it's worth 8. That's how I would look at it. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up. I hope this was informative for you. I know it was kind of long, but it takes a while to go through a vehicle and look at things like this. And I skipped over an awful lot of little stuff on it. So I just want to thank you for watching this video and hope you have a very blessed day.